Very few of us actually step out and say, I'm going to change the climate, change the environment, change the situation around us. And UHPP, again, once again, I'm proud to be affiliated with this group, has stepped out and decided to talk about reframing, re-addressing healthcare in a much more multifaceted context.
Hello, hello, good morning again, and welcome to our, I don't know what conference it is, but it might be 8th or 9th. It's the 5th that I've sort of been part of, and we're happy that it's expanding every year. I think in the first couple of years it was about 80 to 100 people. This year we had almost 300 people sign up. As you can see, the room fills up a little more every year. We're happy that's what's happening. And she said, I want to get in. She said, can you help me get into this program? I need to get in. I need to get my kids back. I want to finish my degree. I want to regain my life. She broke down and was crying and telling me her story. These are the people who we're working to help.
So yes, we do need your help. This is going to be successful and it will be implemented.
I don't know how to word this right, but I think people are getting the care, and there's a lot of facilities, a lot of physicians that write off a lot of bills that don't get paid. So you can go to the emergency room to get coverage at no cost. People know that.
It's also acute care. So it's deferred care, but it's also acute care, where if you need chronic care, that's not accessible through an emergency room. If you have some kind of a chronic illness, they're not going to provide your maintenance medications. They're not going to provide things like that. If you are undiagnosed and you're really sick but you don't know why, they're not going to give you for free all of the diagnostic process to solve your problem in order to treat you. So the everybody gets access to care is really inaccurate, because you're just erasing disabled people. Anyone with a chronic illness is kind of being overlooked with that.
Give the people a voice. If these numbers are right, and the majority of Utahns want to go this way, then let the voice of Utahns be heard.
I will have packets tomorrow. I tried so hard to have them ready by today, but we will have them tomorrow and Monday. You can contact me directly. You can contact Utah Health Policy Project or AARP. They will help you get those packets. A lot of you have my cell phone number in your phone. If you don't have it plugged in there, which I'll be so surprised if you don't, do it right now while it's up here on the screen. Call me. I'm gonna get you your packets. We're gonna get this done. So that's it. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me back. And do you want to introduce Senator? Or? I want to have Senator. Yeah. So Senator Shiozawa he's been through this with us. He is a friend of mine. He's a mentor of mine. He made working with Republicans, Republicans in the legislature bearable. I was young when I started working in this, and I think I had to learn how to craft my messages and how to work with people of differing opinions, but he really showed me that for whatever political spectrum you are, there is a middle, and you can find compromise, and he is the pure embodiment of that. So please help me welcome Senator Shiozawa.
Thank you, and it's an honor to be as part of your conference here today, and thank you for letting me take part of your afternoon. And I'll promise you a couple things here. One, I'll stay on task, and I'll give you the facts and the figures as well as I know them, and I'll give you a little bit of perspective. You know, there is a number of ballot initiatives that are going forward this year that are really interesting, and of course this is one that's very interesting to this group, obviously, the Medicaid expansion initiative, and I'm happy to be one of the signatories on that, and for a lot of reasons I'll go into. But there's other ballot initiatives that talk about districting, or also about Count My Vote, and other initiatives like that. Now you gotta ask yourself, now why is that? Why are there so many ballot initiatives going forward in 2018? And a lot of that is frustration with legislation or failure of legislation on either the part of the governor or your state legislature. And so the citizens have said, we want a voice, we have issues that need to be addressed, and if you're not going to deal with them on the Hill, then we will take it into our hands, our right as citizens to create a ballot initiative and go forward. Now, and especially on the Count My Vote, I think we've seen some interesting perspectives on that, particularly in the CD3 election. You saw how that signatory pathway led to a particular candidate winning who's hit the ground running. I had a chance to talk to him on Monday, and he's already talking about, for example, involving Native Americans in the discussion on further monument designations and how that might affect them. Now, why is it that we didn't do that before? So again, this is the sort of thing that I think we can look at in a very positive standpoint as we go forward. And I'm not of the opinion that the legislature always knows best or the governor always knows best. You know, if you want to be successful, you have to listen to your constituents, to those people who really do the work that you are, and get involved. We experienced that when we passed the autism legislation a couple years ago. And this year we will take the sunset away from that, and those kids with autism will have that coverage going forward. And so we're real pleased with that. And that is something that I can say we delivered on. And how did we do it? We got the moms and the dads and the kids together. And they didn't come up with lobbyists, they came up themselves. And they lobbied on the Hill. This grassroots effort was what brought this forward and what carried it forward. And we delivered on the promises. We kept the cost down, we brought the coverage up, and the kids are the beneficiaries. You know, if we can help 60% of these children with autism and keep them out of group homes, put them into mainstream schools, can you imagine what that's going to be like? Can you imagine the alternative? as parents age and they have a child with autism, what they're going to be facing as those parents age and the child ages too. What's going to happen to them? Well, again, so how do we tie this back in? This is an opportunity we have today to speak out as a group of people and say, this is good public policy. So let's talk now about the Medicaid expansion. I remember sitting down with Secretary Burwell and talking to her specifically about the Healthy Utah and trying to get a waiver through with them. And she basically said, you know, this is what we want. We want 138% or nothing. No work requirements, no work effort requirement, no 100% of the FPL. And so it was a real pushback from the Obama administration on this. They said basically no. Even though Mike Pence was able to get something from Indiana through the Hoosier plan, not many of us were able to do that. Had we been able to get even 100% of the FPL back in 2014, that would have been a huge step forward. And we got it through the Senate here. But the House pushed back on that for a number of reasons. And a couple of big things that you need to keep in mind as the expansion talk goes through, no matter what waiver that you're talking about, is what? How are we going to pay for it? Who's going to be affected? And what are some of the philosophical arguments against this? Now, one of the things about autism is it cuts across all political groups, all age groups, financial groups, from north to south, east to west. Doesn't matter whether you're Utah County or Salt Lake County, autistic kids are there. And so we're able to appeal to that broad-based group of patients and their parents. Now, what the challenge people will have in a Medicaid expansion is you've got to have that same sort of broad-based approach and appeal to make our same statement that these people matter, that this is the way to go forward and it's the right thing to do. 35% of the 141 million patients last year that went through ERs were on Medicaid. It made the single largest group of patients by insurance, more than private insurance, more than Medicare, more than self-insured, Medicaid. And so when lawmakers see that, what's the first thing that comes to their mind? How much is this costing us as a state? And so that's one thing you got to be careful of on this. So how can we bring in Medicaid costs? And so that's one of the issues you'll be looking at as this issue goes forward. The other issue is how are we going to pay for it? So you've come up with a great solution in terms of the sales tax. You know, one of the biggest pushbacks a couple years ago in terms of the Medicaid going forward was what? They wanted the doctors and the hospitals to pay for it exclusively. Whereas the provider said, maybe we should socialize this out and have the population help pay for this. And why is that? Well, after all, we as a group of people, as a state, benefit from this, right? You're going to pay for it. We're going to pay for it regardless. You can pay for it through increased premiums, increased co-pays, and increased costs in ERs, clinics across the board, or you can help reduce those costs by taking these patients. And so we have some very innovative solutions. I want to keep us on track here, but let me just talk about an ideal scenario here. An ideal scenario would be to have some type of a waiver go forward that would allow us in the state of Utah to collect not only money for these Medicaid clients, but also to be able to, what? To be able to get some of this enhanced match back for us. Rio Grande was a good start. I will grant you that. I have a lot of things I'm concerned about, but it does increase the residential treatment beds, it increased mental health counseling, and hopefully it will get in that very poorest of the poor, single adults without children, and help them get care. Now, my last shift on Sunday, I'll bet a third of my patients had no insurance. And these were people who either had jobs or wanted to get jobs. And why did they come to the ER? Because they had no other place to go. They couldn't get into urgent care clinics because urgent care clinics will do what? They ask you for insurance. They couldn't go to their primary care doctor because the primary care docs won't accept patients a lot of times without insurance. And for those few clinics, like the Malay Clinic and some of the free clinics, they're out there at 4th Street Clinic. I mean, thank God. God bless you all for the great work you do. It is woefully inadequate. And the arguments that we heard in caucus and on the Hill is, You can run this program by volunteer clinics. Well, there's no way in a state this size, with this population, that we can anywhere near meet this need, right? And provide these patients. And so what happens? On Sunday, a third of my patients will come in. And these are wonderful people who are vulnerable. I'm not criticizing them, but let's say they don't have health insurance, so their health is not as good as it could be. They don't get the preventative health care. They are more likely, because of mental health problems like anxiety, depression, to do what? They self-medicate. And where do you self-medicate? Well, you can't get it from your doctor, so you'll get it from the street. And so you enter that whole group of homelessness that we see, the great example down in Rio Grande. So what are some of the good things about the Rio Grande? And I believe I'm not criticizing the waiver. I think it's wonderful we got it. I just wish it was a little bigger, a lot bigger. But the fact is that it will help a number of people there, and will increase the jail beds, will increase the protections for those people who are most vulnerable. It'll get us into chronic residential treatment. That's wonderful. Maybe we can break the cycle of recidivism, substance abuse, mental health problems, and help these people to really have the dignity of the life and give them some hope. And oh, by the way, what it will also do for the Republican in me, it'll bring down healthcare costs, and then I can look at funding education. And so, you see, this kind of works together, doesn't it? So this is all of the things we have to look forward to. So thank you for going forward with this. And I am a firm believer in letting the people have their say and letting them speak, because there is frustration. We hear it, we see it, we acknowledge that there is frustration because of the policies not having gone forward. Now, let me just tell you what might happen in the 2017 or early 2018 session, okay? Because we're gearing for that out this next month or so. And that is, will there be an expansion bill go through? There probably will. And it probably won't pass because it'll be a full expansion bill. Because the idea now is, well, we've got something, let's see how we do with this and build upon that. Now, I can tell you that there's a couple reasons that does appeal to me in one sense. And that is, I'm looking with real interest to see how we implement the increased jail beds and the increased mental health utilization, the mental health courts, and also to see how the residential treatment beds work in breaking this cycle. When I did a taping of a show yesterday for the county seat, the commentator said, do you think it would be a metric of success if we helped 70% of these people? If we could help, can you imagine if we had a medication that would help 70% of those people who took this? I mean, we are looking a lot of times at medication procedures that will help a few percentage points, maybe 10%. You get 15%, you've got a blockbuster, and you're going to change the whole medical literature and practice. But clearly, we're looking with real interest, and the nation is looking at Utah with real interest from a lot of areas, from HHS, for example, to see what is going to work. President Trump, for example, has pledged billions of dollars to fight the opioid epidemic. Trouble is, are we doing it right? Are we treating these patients right? Is it right, for example, to go through just say abstinence, kind of withdrawal, and go into Suboxone, medical assisted treatment? Is that the way we should go? Is it through outpatient counseling and working together in that area? And if so, which are the clinics that we ought to be using? And what ought to be the credentialing for those clinics? You see where I'm going with this? This is a huge industry that's going to come up over the next few years, and what we've got to do is do it right. And so Salt Lake County is going to, and this area is going to be really looked at carefully to see what are we doing right, and what is our template for success. Do you know what the homeless czar's budget is in San Francisco? It's over $300 million annually, and you can see the success if you've ever been down to the Embarcadero or some of those areas there, and what lack of success they're having. Obviously, we don't have the solutions out there, and so I'm looking forward to seeing how Rio Grande goes and what works and what doesn't work, and then we can focus our efforts and really concentrate on that. We know that there's certain things like the Odyssey House. We know that residential treatment programs are going to help. What we don't have is enough beds. And so those are some of the things we'll demonstrate. But I'm also looking at the outpatient treatment, how we can go from there. So you guys, the JRI, we thought that was so great a couple of years ago when we passed the Justice Reinitiative. You know, we would take non-violent offenders and not incarcerate them, right? We could let them go and we put them into treatment programs. So what was the big problem we had with that?
No treatment program. That's
Well, no programs because we didn't fund it. And we didn't fund it because we didn't pass an expansion. And Healthy Utah, we look at now, Arkansas all of a sudden says, hey, we're brilliant. We're going to do 100% of the FPL and we're going to ask for the feds with an enhanced match. Does that sound familiar to anybody? If we'd have passed that 2 years ago, we'd have had over $1.2 billion in this state that we could have employed in clinics. Okay, envision this, because this is a solution I'd love to involve and to bring here in Salt Lake County and Utah County and elsewhere. I'd love to see us hire more nurse practitioners, more PAs, and work together in clinics dedicated on a community basis for prevention. And bring our Medicaid and uninsured clients into those clinics like we do on a certain basis, but bring that increased funding in, hire more mid-level advanced practitioner models there, and keep these people out of my ER. What would you do? You do that, you save a couple patients per day of the ER, you'll fund every one of these clinics. And they'll get better care, there'll be continuity of care, and frankly, their health will be better. So we've raised the quality, increased the access, and decreased the costs. So, I see I'm halfway. Actually, I'm actually over halfway, you guys. I'll be happy to take some questions here. But that's some of the innovations I think we can do together, but we gotta have the funding. JRI was a great idea. Don't incarcerate these guys who don't need to be in jail. Maybe they've had some hard luck. They've got into substance abuse. They've gotten themselves into trouble. So let's rehabilitate them. What are the 3 goals in the justice system? What are our 3 goals? Well, the first one is what? Public safety. Well, our police here, we do a pretty good job. I mean, the streets are pretty safe. Could be better, but they're pretty safe. Other one's accountability. Guys really have to pay for their crimes. I don't care where you fall on the death penalty issue. That's a topic for another day. But the fact is that there is the accountability, right? And what's the third leg? Absolutely has to happen in order for the JRI to work. Rehabilitation. And if we don't do those 3 things, you're going to have recidivism. You're going to have a failure of our system as well as it was intended, because those people will go into the jails. They'll be there for whatever time it is, if the jail happens to have capacity, right? So the police don't just arrest them, take them to jail, they're automatically released on the street again. But if there is capacity, then they can then either go into whatever incarceration they have, and then either go through the judicial system, mental health courts, drug courts, and then do the treatment. But we've got to have the funding. And that was what was so important for the JRI, and that's what we didn't do with that. So you see, this all is critical in order for these things to go forward. And so for the office of the JRI, maybe this is a glimmer of hope that we can do this, but we've got to get the funding. And we're looking at the ballot initiative, and I think that'll be interesting. That won't be until the election of 2018. So what, if anything, is going to happen this next legislative session? Let me just summarize and conclude with that to kind of whet your appetite for this upcoming session. There will probably be a full expansion bill. That will probably go nowhere because they'll probably be put out by my Democrat colleagues, bless their hearts, and which will mean they probably won't get our rules. But the fact is that there will probably be a full expansion bill out there. And the pushback will be why? Well, we've got the Rio Grande, let's see how we do with that. And there may be some logic to that, but I will tell you that that'll be some of the discussion. I heard it in our last session up there on HHS. There will also be one that I think is very innovative by Steve Ellison that I'll co-sponsor in the Senate, and that is a PCN expansion. Now what that does is takes the previous PCN waiver and then expands it from not just primary outpatient care, right, to do what? So they can have specialty care, EKGs, inpatients, and specialty care. And so that would be an expansion, and that would basically involve up to 12, another 16,000 patients. The Utah Hospital Association supports this, UMA supports this. Why? Because it seems to make a lot of sense. The only thing I don't like about that, it's only a 70-30 match. And you guys are still paying all of these taxpayer dollars back east, and we're not recouping those. And yet there's still some philosophical arguments against that. Well, again, you're expanding Medicaid, and that will be the pushback, whether it's a particular objection to the type of individuals who perceive to be our Medicaid clients, or whether it's a financial issue. But that will be, and it has a fiscal note. We'll work with the Hospital Association on that. We'll look at some other creative thing. But then, so PCN expansion might be another way that we look forward to that. So that's kind of what we see at this point. You've got the work cut out for you. The signature gathering is going to be a huge part, so the people can have a vote in this. But also consider this. When I was back in August talking to one of the general counsels for CMS, they used some language that I'd never heard before. They said, we want to be more customer friendly. Now, when have you ever heard that from the federal government? We want to be more customer friendly. And it was with the pledge that we will look at state waivers more openly, and we will be much more aggressive about enabling you to have these waivers to do your experiments, because I think it was very candid and transparent on CMS's part, saying we don't know all the answers. And there's a lot of latitude within the Affordable Care Act for the Secretary to look at waivers that might work for, say, Utah versus maybe California, New York, or Florida. And so that's another avenue. We should always keep the 1332, 1115, whatever waiver you want to look at, and go forward. One of the chilling things that's going to hit, though, you guys, in 2018 is your premiums for your insurance. Across the board, whether you like the CSR changes or not, there's going to be 10 to 35% across the board increases in your insurance premiums, whether you're an employer, you're on the individual marketplace, or whoever it happens to be in front of you. And if you think about that, that is unsustainable, you guys. Now, Riley, Matt, you've made the great case of the fiscal part of this. This is unsustainable. You already know the statistics. Our healthcare is way too expensive. Our pharmaceuticals are way too expensive. And why is that? And there's another area that we need to look at, and that I would encourage the Secretary and the President to look at, is looking at negotiating with Medicare and Medicaid in terms of pharmaceutical prices to help bring down those prices so that they're more affordable for the citizens. We can do things like increasing competition. We passed a bill. You remember that? We passed a bill last session that let us have different EpiPen injectors. And why was that? Because one pharmaceutical company had the patent on the injector. And so they could raise the price from whatever it was up to $700, which basically made it unaffordable for almost everybody. And so if you needed the EpiPen, you couldn't afford it. And so we passed legislation that would allow various EpiPens to be out there and hopefully lower the price down to make that more affordable, right? Well, you can look at the same thing with insulin. Insulin. We've had this recombinant insulin for decades, and now we're seeing the prices go up and up and up, and I don't know how the insurance companies can afford to pay that and still provide the adequate amounts of insulin for patients. And this isn't a luxury. This is life and death. So you guys, thank you so much for inviting me today and letting me take a few minutes of your time. I think if you don't ask for it, you will not get it. And so if you don't go out and get your signatures, you won't have a voice at the table. And that, in order for you to have negotiating power with anybody, you're going to need your signatures. And for what reason? Well, you can think about it for the very simple reason that give the people a voice. If these numbers are right, and the majority of Utahns want to go this way, then let the voice of Utahns be heard. But also, if the signature gathering goes forward and it demonstrates that there is a possible, plausible, affordable solution, then it will also give stimulus and impetus to the legislature to act. And even during that time, then also look at additional waivers. We may have to go at this thing incrementally, or we may take it a big bite. But one thing is clear, we do have to go forward with it. So thank you very much. Thank you for letting me spend some time with you today.